Hello YouTube, Dave here again. I thought for this video I would do another viewer question that I've gotten a few times in the past. So I can't remember any one specific person that's asked me this, but it is a question that I've seen a few different times. And that is because my channel focuses pretty much exclusively on Dungeons & Dragons with a few Magic the Gathering videos and a couple of other stuff scattered randomly throughout. I had people ask what my opinions are on Pathfinder. And if I planned on ever really talking more about like the Pathfinder role-playing game in addition to Dungeons & Dragons. So, my thoughts on Pathfinder, it really depends on what I'm going to be doing in the game. If I'm a player or if I'm a dungeon master. So starting off, if I'm a player, I am completely fine with playing Pathfinder. If somebody had said, in my area, or somebody that wanted to start a game, said, hey, I'm going to be running a Pathfinder game, do you want to, join? The answer would be sure. I'd love to play. At this point, I'd really do anything as a player because I never get that opportunity. But I would be okay with playing Pathfinder. In fact, the reason that I have this core book is because I bought it to actually play as a player. Not run as a dungeon master, but to play as a player because I had somebody in my group before I moved away, a few years back, that wanted to run it. So that's why I actually went out and bought the core book. I also have my only other Pathfinder book that I own is the Advanced Player's Guide. And I bought this as well just to have a few extra options for creating my character. So these are the two Pathfinder books that I own. Now, as far as being a dungeon master goes, my thoughts on Pathfinder is I'm not interested in running it. And the reason for that is for anyone who's sort of new to, like the role-playing game scene, like the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons and so on and so forth. There are some people out there who don't actually know Pathfinder's history because they're newer and they just know that the two major games that people tend to talk about are either Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder. So Pathfinder, if you look here, I don't know how well it's going to show up, but right here, it says that it is 3.5 OGL compatible. So for people that have been around for a while, they know exactly what that means. But for newer people, what that means is that Pathfinder came out after the release of 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Now, when Paizo Publishing, initially what they did, and I know there's two different ways to pronounce it, I always called it Paizo because it had the A after the P, but anyway, they were doing Dungeon Magazine and Dragon Magazine for Wizards of the Coast and for Dungeons & Dragons. Near the end of D&D 3.5's print run, Wizards of the Coast announced that they were not going to be renewing their contract with Paizo, however you want to say it, to continue the magazines, and instead they were going to do the magazines as online supplements only. But because Paizo had so many subscribers to their magazines, they decided that they were going to keep going and keep releasing stuff using the 3.5 Open Gaming License and SRD, which is the standard reference document, I believe it is. So they actually ended up doing stuff with that, and they decided, at first I think it was just campaigns that they were making that used the straight 3.5 OGL, and as time went on they started to develop their own system. Now it still used the 3.5 rules, but they had their own sort of takes on things or enhancements or changes that they were going to do, and they actually ended up doing, I think it was a 1-year open play test of it, eventually coming to the release of the Pathfinder core rulebook, which came out, the initial printing was in, if I can find it here, 2010. 2009, sorry, is when the first is when the first printing came out. This was the 4th printing, which came out in 2010. I had somebody in my 4th edition retrospective say that my timelines were off, but I don't think they're quite right. Pathfinder as a concept existed before 4th edition came out, and that's true, but the actual Pathfinder rule system didn't exist until 2009, so 4th edition had been out for a full year. So that's just one thing I kind of want to get out there in the open and try to clarify for some people. So the fact of the matter is that even though they made some changes, this game, this Pathfinder role-playing game, is still very much Dungeons & Dragons 3.5. And a lot of the things that I found frustrating or irritating as a dungeon master in Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 are still present here. Now they do address some of the things, like my two biggest issues were spell resistance and damage reduction, because in 3.5 they changed damage reduction to be based off of the material that the weapon was made out of. It was an idea that I actually thought was pretty cool to begin with, because in 3.0 there was never any reason to have a silvered weapon, because even things that are vulnerable to silver weapons would be just as vulnerable to a magic weapon. And you're more likely to get a magic weapon before you get a silvered weapon anyway. So with 3.5 I thought, oh, this is going to be pretty cool, because now you actually, the silver weapon will be more effective against the creatures. But they overdid it, and so many things had damage reduction at all levels of play, which was the crazy thing. Pretty much from first level all the way up to 20th, you could find creatures within your level range of threats that had some form of damage reduction. Now, Pathfinder did fix this using a system where the magical enhancement bonus of your weapon could supersede certain types of materials. Which is a house rule that I had actually made before I even got this book, so it was interesting that they ended up going in the same direction. But it's just one of those things that it's still there. And just because, there are a few ways around it, it's still sort of one of the more annoying features. And I think spell resistance is pretty much the exact same. And honestly, as a dungeon master, like the skill system in 3.5 is something that I really just did not like and tried to tweak and house rule a bunch. And Pathfinder does a little bit better because they combine some things that desperately needed to be combined, like spot and listen just being perception, and hide and move silently just being stealth. But it's still just, it has a lot of the features that I just got really tired of. And for me, I ran 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons from 3.0 to 3.5 until about 2011, 2012. Now, 3rd edition ceased publication in 2008. So for almost 4 years after 3rd edition and 3.5 was discontinued, I was still running it. And so I ran 3rd edition D&D for 12 years. And honestly, or pretty close to, and honestly, I just got really tired of the rule set. I was really tired of things like prestige classes. I didn't like the way that they were handled. Again, the skill system is something that I didn't really like, and I wanted something different. So from a DM's perspective, I will likely never run Pathfinder. Not that it's a bad system, and if you're interested in 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons, then I would recommend this over 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons any day of the week. So if you're looking to play that kind of style, then this is the way to go 100% for sure. It's just not something that I ever want to run again. I'd play it in a heartbeat, but I never want to run this version of the game. As far as the future of Pathfinder, I thought I may as well take a little bit of time to kind of talk about that as well. Because right now, while Pathfinder is highly successful, in fact for a long period of time, it was the #1 selling role-playing game, outselling 4th edition, pretty handily for the most part. The thing is it's not something that's actually original to Paizo Publishing, or Paizo. So I think that they've been around long enough, and the Pathfinder game has been around long enough, that what I really want to see is a Pathfinder 2nd edition, which contains their own unique system. I think it's time for them to do something that is out of the shadows of 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons. I know that they recently released something called Starfinder, and I hear it's well received. I just don't know what the rule set is, and it's probably also 3.5 OGL compatible. Now, they could theoretically make a 5th edition open gaming license compatible system as well, but I don't really know if I want them to do that. I think I would love to see a new version of Pathfinder come out that is their own rule sets, their own mechanics. They can take the time, take a couple years, play test it thoroughly. It doesn't have to be completely divorced from, the system that they have here. I'm just a little bit tired. Again, the 3.5 is something that I ran to death, and I'm not that keen on it anymore. And yeah, I'd play Pathfinder if someone offered, but I would still much rather play something like 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, which I kind of prefer, overall compared to to 3.5. But that said, you know, if you're a fan of Pathfinder, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just I played this rule set, or the pre-existing version of this rule set, for so long that I just burned myself out on it to the point where I'm just not interested. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Now, if you guys do want to see more Pathfinder content, it's something that I have been considering, but it really kind of depends on what I can get for funds coming in. If I can start getting enough, like through my Patreon and through YouTube ad revenue, to start, you know, being able to buy things, you know, more things a month and not have to worry about, you know, what I'm going to be getting when, I might be willing to go through and do some more Pathfinder related stuff. I would love to get the Pathfinder beginner box and open that up and kind of go through that. I know it's kind of got mixed reviews and everything, but I would actually really enjoy having that product. And that's probably the only other Pathfinder thing that I really want to get. I'm considering getting Starfinder and kind of looking through that because it is a fantasy thing, or not fantasy, it's a science fiction thing. So that's something that I might be interested in as well. At this point in time, it is incredibly difficult to find it in stock. Most places, when they get their copies in within 48 hours, they tend to be sold out. And there are some other things that are kind of on my radar right now. So 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons is always going to take the top priority. But maybe sometime in February, after all the dungeon tiles are, you know, out and I've got them in my collection, if you want me to look at Starfinder, then, you know, hopefully I'll be able to get a copy of it. So anyway, just sort of my thoughts on the Pathfinder role-playing game. One last thing I will say, however, Pathfinder has some of the best accessories I've ever seen. So, you know the D&D Adventure Grid that I did a video on a while back. It's like the cardboard, game board style. It's got slit down the middle and you kind of fold it up. Pathfinder has some battle mats that are made to be the same kind of idea with the dry erase markers and stuff, but it's just the thin, you know, glossy surface. It's not like a cheap cardboard stuff glued to it. And those look actually really, really nice. Pathfinder also has a bunch of game aid cards with equipment and spells and stuff like that that, again, look really, really, really nice and are really great products. So, you know, they have some amazing accessories. And, you know, from that perspective, there's a lot of really good things about it. Like I said, it's just the rule set is something that I've done to death, so I'm not that keen on it for those reasons. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What are your opinions on Pathfinder? And do you think it's time for Paizo to strike out on their own and to create their own system from scratch? So let me know what you guys think. I look forward to reading your comments, and we'll see you next time.